What's up, Warriors? Nick here, bringing you another podcast today. Today we are lucky enough to have on Heather Klaassen. Heather Klaassen is a personal trainer for over 7 years. She's a WBFF Pro Bikini competitor. She is the owner of Valhalla Barbell Club, a local powerlifting and weightlifting gym here in Wichita, Kansas, where I am currently residing. Heather also is the new manager of Restore Hyper Wellness, and Cryo. So without further ado, let's welcome on Heather Klaassen. Sorry for the technical difficulty here. Just 1 second. We are getting Heather in now. And as soon as she enters the Zoom chat here, we'll go ahead and start the cast. But some other things about Heather, she's also a fitness model, and she has an online training. She also personal trainer. Heather,
hey.
How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm very good. Thank you. Well, welcome on to the Weekend Warrior Playbook podcast. We're very excited to have you. Give a quick intro on everything that you do. So personal trainer for over 7+ years, WBFF Pro Bikini competitor, owner of Valhalla Barbell Club, and then the new manager of Restore Hyper Wellness and Cryo. So please, if I left anything out.
Well, Valhalla Barbell Club wasn't actually mine. It was my husband's. Okay. And then he kind of gave over his share to the board. So not owners anymore, but definite full-time supporters of that gym.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
So how are you dealing with the quarantine and the shelter in place now?
I mean, well, I've been, working out at home in our apartment, and just doing what I can with what I've got. And I am still working full-time from home on my computer, on Zoom calls. And then Restore is considered an essential business. So although we're not open just yet, I am getting everything ready for us to open. So I do go into the store. I'm putting furniture together. I'm making supply orders for IV drips and such. So still
Very
going.
Cool.
Yeah.
So just starting at the beginning here, like, how did you get into the fitness space? What drew you to, being a personal trainer? And, as I, not to be creep or anything, I like to do a deep dive on anybody I'm bringing in just to get some information on them, what the background is, and, just gathered some information. And then just to kind of give the listeners a little bit of background, we did go to high school together.
Yeah.
Right. So I have known you. I know we didn't, we weren't close or anything back in the day, but I have known you for a long time. And so just kind of give the listeners a little bit of an idea of like how you got into the fitness space, or what drew you to that.
So, growing up, I did go to a lot of different schools. And so during that time, I don't want to say I didn't know myself. I mean, I guess we all don't really know ourselves as kids, but I was trying to find myself, I guess you could say. And when I got into college, I got into rugby, and my husband now, but boyfriend at the time, he was doing powerlifting at a little hole-in-the-wall gym called Olympic Iron at KU. And so between rugby and him doing powerlifting, I started kind of getting into lifting then. And with my dance minor, I got into kinesiology and anatomy. And so after graduating, I went into sales, and But that's also when I started training for my first fitness, like bikini competition. And through that process of prepping for my first show, I really kind of found myself, every struggle that I had in the gym, I felt like really paralleled any struggle I had in life, in my career, in trying to overcome insecurities. And so it just really was very enticing for me to really dive headfirst into that prep, into learning everything I possibly could about the fitness industry. And I guess I'd say after that first show, that was kind of, well, during that prep, that was kind of it for me. I was like, I don't know why I'm in sales. I need to be pursuing something in the fitness field. And so I took a leap of faith out of my very well-paying manager role as a sales manager for 3 newspapers, and decided to take a little bit of a pay cut and become a personal trainer. And that was it. So I just dived headfirst into it that way.
Very cool. Yeah, I find a lot of times when you talk to somebody that's in like the personal training space or fitness coaching, usually there was a big risk involved, right? So like they're leaving some job to kind of go out on their own, or so, you know, what was that like for you? Like, what was the determining factor that just made you take that leap?
So the job that I had, it just wasn't fulfilling in the way that I thought that it would be, climbing the corporate ladder and making a ton of money. And so I kind of started to redefine what success meant to me at that point in my life. And it also became very apparent that helping people feel good about themselves, but also helping people do things the right way. So, and what I mean by that is, when I was prepping for my first show, it wasn't necessarily the healthiest way to be doing things. And I didn't want anybody else, there's just so much misinformation out there, and I didn't want anybody else to have to go through that. And so during the time that I was getting ready for this show and I was doing all my research, people would be asking me, you know, like, how are you doing this? And how are you reaching these goals? And can you help me? And so I was kind of doing it for free. I was like, look, I don't have a degree in this. I don't have a certification. I'm doing my own research. So I'm happy to help you, but I'm not going to charge you for it. And, but the more I was doing that, the more I felt like, you need to be doing this full time. And you might not be making as much money starting out. You would have to grow a business. It's more entrepreneurial, but you know, what is success to you now? And success to me was feeling like I was doing something fulfilling with my life, helping other people achieve their goals and making sure that they were doing it healthily. And it was my passion. So I had to do it. So I just quit my job.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Well, and that's, I'm sorry. And that's what I think was one of the coolest things. And you said it, it's needing to be fulfilled. And that's what, you know, something that I think we share in common, and a lot of trainers, is that, you know, we couldn't just do like the regular 9 to 5. We basically turned a hobby into something we can make money off of, which is really cool, or something that we're very passionate about and we're now able to make money off of, which I think is so cool. And that's one of the things I think that we are blessed, and I thank God every day, or, you know, whatever you believe in, that, you know, it's really cool to be able to have this as a job. And then also to hit on the point where you said, you know, you're not doing this for the money. You know, obviously we need to make a living, we need to pay the bills and whatnot, but to be able to see those changes in people and to help somebody on the right path. Because, I don't know if you were like this when you first started out with like bodybuilding or working out, but a lot of times there's so much misinformation that we end up spinning our wheels, going into the gym, maybe doing the same weights, the same reps, the same sets every single week. There's no progression. Or the diet could be completely out of whack. So, the cliche saying of you can't outtrain a bad diet is so true. And so, with that, tell me, like, what path did you go down as far as like your personal training certification? Did you
Yeah.
NASM, any of those things?
So I would highly recommend for anybody who doesn't have an education, like a background in anatomy and biomechanics, to definitely get a really great certification, an NASM or a CSCS type of certification, because then you will gain that information, that knowledge from those certifications. But if you have a background or some education, I'm going to be honest, Nick, I didn't go for the most expensive certification because my reasoning is this. I felt like, one, I didn't have a lot of money. Two, I felt like I could read the NASM book and not pay the expense for it and educate myself. I can go to seminars, I can go to workshops, I can visit with some of the most educated people in the industry and absorb some of their knowledge and be better off than if I was to just get an NASM certification and then rest on my laurels and not ever apply that information and just take people through like brutal beating workouts. So to be honest, I didn't really get the most prestigious certification. I got the NCCPT, which is the National Council of Certified Personal Trainers, and it did its job for me. And I also continue to get continuing ed credits through that same company in nutrition and other biomechanics and such. So
For sure.
a lot of
Go ahead.
Oh, so a lot of the education that I feel like I've gained was knowledge from what, in my mind, over the years, I've called like founding fathers of fitness. I've literally never told anybody this before. So there are just some really great people. Like when you think about, well, one, I have somebody, a mentor when I started out at Genesis. His name is Mark Slavin. He was one of the educators on board at the time that taught everybody biomechanics as it relates to anatomy and anatomy as well. And we did all sorts of continuing education. There was Todd Durkin. I did some education with Todd Durkin. I did some education, studying through like people like Lane Norton, John Meadows, and then I would say the rest are probably more nutritional based, but it wasn't like, what does this random Google article say? It was like, read a book.
But I think a lot of that helps though. And just to preface, like I completely 100% agree with you. And whoever I offend by saying this, I don't care. But I think certifications are one of the most overrated things that you can have.
For sure.
And all the training that or all the knowledge that you're going to get, it can come from so many different sources, right? And yeah, to me, that holds true as well. Like I got a CSCS only because like my goal out of college was to be a strength conditioning coach for a sports team. For sure. So at the time out of college, I was working with a sports medicine company where we trained a lot of youth athletes that were going to play Division I sports. So that CSCS was needed for that. Had I not been in that pathway, I wouldn't have done a CSCS. I would have done like the cheapest like certification I could find just to have that document to say I'm a certified personal trainer.
You can get all the information. You can get information from all the other certifications to educate yourself.
Right.
I mean.
And are you familiar with Ben Bruno? Do you know who that is?
Ben Bruno?
Yeah.
No, actually, I'm not.
So he kind of comes from like the Mike Boyle camp. He's a celebrity and professional athlete trainer. So he trains like Chelsea Handler.
Okay.
He trains like a
Oh,
ton of big names. He's actually a really good follow on Instagram if you don't already. Like he's pretty hilarious. And he trains like a ton of professional basketball players and stuff too, all out of his garage, which is also really awesome. Minimal equipment, whatever. But what he always said was like the best certification he ever had was a certified nice guy. So, so he just like,
right.
you don't need anything. It's just, is being able to talk to people and really wanting to help somebody rather than just like get in a client, get on to the next one. It's not like a conveyor belt system. You really have to have the know-how, but then, it's really that personal touch. I mean, as when dealing with like a personal training client, half the battle is just having somebody to give a shit about them. They
Yeah.
just want somebody that like cares and that's going to check up on them and that's going to keep them accountable more than anything. The programming can be whatever, but I think that that's really cool. And again, 100% agree with you on that.
I guess I do think that you should have a certification to train people, but I'm just saying having the most prestigious training certification doesn't make you a better trainer than somebody that has a less prestigious one, because it's
Right.
in the hands of the individual to educate themselves. That's all I'm saying. And like you said, it's all about how you apply that information with the client, and how you take care of them and take care of not just their physical well-being, but like you said, checking in with them, their emotional well-being. And that's what makes people a good trainers. Actually, to get me on a tangent, what I think actually makes
Let's do it.
part of what makes somebody a good trainer is understanding biomechanics and anatomy.
Oh, for sure.
If you don't understand that, then what are you doing as a trainer?
Right.
I
So
mean,
for in any of the listeners that don't already know any of my background, like I did an exercise physiology degree at KU and then a little bit of grad program at Wichita State. And, I learned, had to go through anatomy, had to go through physiology, had to go through biomechanics and all that. And, it gave me a really good base foundation. But I will say this, most of the anatomy and everything that I use now, I've learned since college. Like I've learned by just doing the research, finding good resources and I'm always continually educating myself. And I love when you said that there was a mentor at the gym that was teaching biomechanics, that was teaching anatomy, that there was continuing education. And that's one of the things I do think a certification is good for, especially like the bigger name ones, is that they do require those continuing education courses. Because, as somebody in the fitness industry or health and wellness in general, you should always be continually educating. You should be learning about rehabilitation. Like you should be learning about nutrition. You should be learning about the newest trends in fitness or, the newest studies that come out. And actually to digress on that too is knowing how to read a research study is hugely important, because they can manipulate that information to tell you anything they want, right?
for sure.
But if you know how to pick out the good things, you're way more set up for success.
For
and
sure.
You're gonna help your clients a lot more.
Yes, definitely understanding how to read the research and the science of that. I remember sitting when I was first starting out, like sitting there, I would literally be going through and have to be Googling words, number one, when I first started out, to make sure I was understanding what I was reading. And two, like you said, trying to understand like the test groups, and trying to understand how they compared against one another, or, what was valid and what wasn't valid within those test groups, and if it was case studies. But yeah.
Well, and also looking at those things objectively, like really like putting like any of like your own personal real world experiences into what they're doing, right? And like just kind of having a know-how, like if it's like something where they're in this like super contained environment of like sleeping 10 hours a day, plus they have, you know, the great, like any food up to, you know, they have unlimited food and unlimited time to train. Of course you're going to get results on whatever it is, right?
Right.
But we're talking about real world
What's
shit where I
realistic?
only get like 5 hours of sleep a night and it's crappy at that. So like, you know, how is this supplement or whatever we're testing going to really work for me is based off, like, we need some real world shit, real world
For
knowledge
real.
on that. So you kind of going a little bit backwards, you had mentioned your founding fathers of fitness or something like that. What is that about?
So those are just, so when I was getting started out, they're kind of like the guys that had been in the fitness industry a really long time that I had looked up to, and that was putting out good information, good articles, like case studies, or using case studies or other research to back up their arguments and putting them together for people to learn from, basically. And so John Meadows was a huge one for me. John Meadows, Lane Norton, and then there were like people in nutrition, like, well, Lane Norton, David. I've literally never had this conversation with anybody before, and I've never had to say these names to anybody because so like David, I don't know if it's a spray or a spry, but the bulletproof coffee guy.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm familiar. Yeah.
His research, oh gosh, Yates, the guy that invented Yates Rose.
Dorian Yates?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean, big time Mr. Olympia. Yeah, hell yeah. Well, those are some that's good foundation right there. So
Yeah.
Lane Norton, right? He's like one of the best follows on Twitter just because he gets in the nastiest battles with people.
Does he?
And oh yeah, and he likes, you know, I respect the guy because he will stick to his guns and he's not afraid to tell people what is on his mind. So with that, what's your nutrition philosophy currently? I know like some things change depending on what your goals are and what you're doing, but right now, what's your personal nutrition philosophy?
So one thing, you know, studies do change, but one thing that never changes is the simple fact that micronutrients can be used like a drug. And I think people take that for granted. And so my whole thing is understanding how vitamins and minerals affect your body and how they affect your organ function for proper hormone production, and not just hormone production, but the utilization of those hormones, because you can be producing hormones properly, but you may not be utilizing them properly, metabolizing them properly. And so that's one thing that's never going to change, is we may find out that a certain micronutrient might do more or less than what has been said, but we know for a fact that these things do affect how your organs function and how your hormones produce. And if we can find a way to balance them, then you're going to be optimizing your body. So that's kind of my philosophy, is focusing on micronutrients and how they affect organ function and hormone metabolism. So
yeah. And I mean, and that's huge because that has so much to do with recovery, right? So like how your body's going to recover from a strenuous training session, and then how you're going to be able to perform in that training session as well. Yeah, I have recently like really dove into like a more of a plant-based diet. Now I still eat meat, so definitely not vegan whatsoever.
Oh, you want to talk about that kind of
hell yeah,
philosophy?
Yeah, I want to get into like, are you in like keto? Are you carbs are the greatest? Carbs suck, whatever. I want to know what your thoughts are, what like your personal experiences moreover of like, you know, are we doing, you know, what is it a balance? Is it one or the other? What do you think?
So that's a loaded question. So for myself, I prefer balance. But I feel like there are so many factors to consider when you're working with an individual or when you're working with a client.
Yeah.
Not just what's best for their body and their training regimen, but what are they going to actually be able to adhere to meet their needs. And
Right.
so I feel like adherence is huge in whether a nutrition plan, because not necessarily a diet, could be about performance, whether a nutrition plan is going to be effective for somebody or not. And so if they can't stick to the damn thing, then
It's
nothing's
terrible. It
gonna
doesn't matter
fucking
what it is.
happen.
Yeah, you're right.
So
You're right. And I'm sorry for the loaded question, but I 100% agree with you. It is when dealing with like a clientele, it is all about like what is something they can adhere to. I would say, at least for me and my experience with personal training over the years, you know, generally most people come to you with the goal of weight loss, right? Would you agree with that? Most people. So
yeah.
what is it? Yeah, or maybe it's some sort of rehab, or maybe it's I want to get stronger, you know, or whatever. If they do come in with a goal of, you know, I want to run a marathon in 6 months, that's awesome because that gives us actually something to train for,
Right.
right? And it gives us that tangible goal. But if it is weight loss, yes, it's any diet's going to work so long as we're in a caloric deficit. So what, you know, what is that person going to stick to? What are they going to adhere to? And that is always challenging to find that. I feel like it can be some of the most, you know, challenging stuff. So now for you personally, like, how would you diet down for one of your bikini shows? Like, what was the method? Were you tracking macros? Were you cutting out carbs completely? And I'm sure the diet's changed since then if you're not competing anymore, but you know, what, give us a little glimpse into what that was like.
So over the years, nutrition for me has evolved. Well, it's evolved for everyone. When I first started out competing, there was no mass communication on flexible dieting and counting macros. It was not like a fad, like it wasn't a trend like it is now. It, not that it's a fad, but it wasn't a trend to be discussing it. We also didn't have Instagram when I started.
Yeah.
So like I said, it's evolved. When I first started out, it was very bro style, not really science based.
Right, like brown rice, chicken,
Yeah.
and broccoli, basically the bro diet.
And so that's why when I went through that process, I was like, there's got to be a better way. And as I was doing my research over the years trying to figure it out, more information was coming out about flexible dieting and counting macros and you know, low carb diets or high fat diets or whatever. So I actually tried I've tried all different ways of dieting down for shows. And even within one prep, I've had to adjust from one style to another. And I don't want to say that one way is better than another, but the most consistent form of dieting that you can do for the longest period of time is going to be the healthiest form. So it started off kind of bro, then it was testing out how these different like carb cycling versus high fat, low carb diet would affect my body. And then it turned into most recently, which is more balanced, of counting macros, whole foods, focusing on optimizing your body, paying attention to micronutrients, so that you can help with, hormone function is huge in fat loss, recovery, maintaining muscle mass. So if your organs aren't functioning properly because they're not receiving the nutrients that they need, then you're just running your body into the ground every time you cut for a show. And so as I got older, I became wiser and decided that the more well-rounded I could maintain my nutrition throughout a prep, I may not be I don't know how to explain this, but year after year of doing it that way, I would get leaner and leaner for a show. So the first time that I tried doing it that way, I wasn't the most leanest that I had ever been for a show, but I was the healthiest I had been for a show. And so I was able to continue to keep competing without screwing my hormones up every time. So then the second time I prepped for a show using that method, I was leaner than the last time with more muscle mass because my body was just more metabolically sound. I was also able to eat more calories to cut for that show each time. I've done about 9 or 10 shows. So
there was a lot of trial and error and manipulation going on there, like kind of changing it up, and I think it's huge, because any sort of stage competing, whether it be bodybuilding, bikini comp, physique, whatever, it can be very unhealthy. People,
it can.
when they step on the stage at 3% body fat, they're probably depriving themselves of so much. And I mean, I know there's a water cut and all that stuff that goes into it, but there is a healthy way to do it, and that is, like you said, by keeping in those micronutrients and like really paying attention to, how your body is adapting to the food and the changes in the food. And obviously the healthier you're going to be is when you're going to be eating the most calories on show day. You know what I mean? Like the more calories you can eat leading up to show day, the healthier you're going to be. And so and like if
go ahead. Oh, okay. No. Well, I ended up wanting to focus on longevity in the sport, and the concept that kept playing over and over in my head was it's body building, not body cutting. And so you need to have a better foundation to build on, not just a muscular foundation, but hormonal based foundation, to be able to keep going in this sport. And so ever since I made that adjustment where I was paying attention to more of like gut health, micronutrients, keeping calories higher, cutting slower over a longer period of time, being a little bit more well balanced in my macronutrient split, has allowed me to get better and better. So I would say I started doing that not until like my 6th show. So about halfway through my competition career, but each time I did it, I was leaner and leaner for each show after following, and I had more muscle, and I was healthier, and I'd like to keep competing, as long as I can, but yeah.
Okay. And so, yeah, I wanted to ask you, are you still interested in doing bikini competitions?
I am. I want to take it in stride. I think that people run themselves hard, trying to do show after show and trying to get that pro card. Like I said, it's bodybuilding, not body cutting. And if you look at some of the most infamous people in the sport, how long have they been in it? Not 3 years, not 5 years, not 8 years. They've been in it for 12 plus years. And so I think our generation can maybe, and younger can maybe be a little impatient. And so they want to do all of this right away and fast. And that's fine, but I don't see longevity in that. So I remember when Instagram did come about, I remember seeing all of these girls getting their pro cards or becoming nationally qualified within 1 to 3 years of their competition career. And some of them had just started exercising, lifting weights for the first time. And then just like 2 or 3 years ago, these same girls are no longer in the sport. Many of them had such severe health issues from it. They've stopped competing and are just like social media influencers, which is fine. But I feel like you need to give your body a break, not a break. How do I say this? In your off season or your improvement season should be longer. It should be 1 to 3 years so that you can build, focus on your metabolic efficiency, have a good solid foundation, have a healthy relationship with food, number one, so that after a show, you don't have those post-show rebounds. You can just go into a well-balanced, healthy living lifestyle, put on a healthy amount of weight, like 5 to 10 pounds, not 25, 30 to 40 pounds, and not have all these gut health issues. So with that being said, I haven't competed since 2017 and November 2017. But I do want to compete again, and I don't have a specific date set. I would like to compete sooner than later. But with the way the world is, a lot of the shows got pushed, nobody knows when the shows are. So, since I haven't competed in a while, I feel like I'm in a good place mentally, physically. And so right now I'm just focusing on maintaining the muscle mass I do have, and maintaining a healthy lifestyle and a healthy relationship with food. And then when we kind of have a better understanding of dates and things like that, then I will set a goal. But yeah, I'd like to compete again.
At the height of your competing, like how many shows would you do in a calendar year? Like how many shows would you do in a 12-month period?
1 to 2.
Okay. Is
2
that
max.
pretty typical in that space, or do you find like that's a small number, that's a big number? Like
I feel like it should be typical, and I feel like for maybe a lot of the well-seasoned vets, that is typical, because they understand the importance of building and rebuilding their metabolism and foundation. But I feel like right now it's a huge trend to do like 5 to 6 shows in a year, just chasing that national qualification or pro card. But again, I know for a fact those people are not going to have longevity in the sport. And if that's what they want, that's fine. There's no, if they want to get that pro card, that's like their end goal, and they're just going hard, balls to the wall for it. And they understand what that means as far as how it is taxing on their body, by all means. But
yeah, so for anybody that's listening to this that wants to get into that status, or to get their pro card with any of these bodybuilding organizations, male or female, like what would your advice to them be? Like, how did you approach that? Or like, how did you do, like, why WBFF over any of the other organizations, and kind of give us a rundown of like the lead up to that, like how you got to that point.
So, I think at the time, when I was choosing between WBFF and NPC, WBFF at the time was more appealing to me because it had an aspect of showmanship, and you had connections with like world-renowned photographers and things. Like, you were getting in front of people that chose models for Oxygen magazine or Status Fitness and or Muscle Mag, and which I think you get in front of some of those same people with other organizations. But because of the type of production WBFF puts on, you actually had like conversations with these people, opportunities to talk to the photographers and get in front of them. And so that was appealing to me because I wanted to also do that aspect as well.
Fitness modeling, right?
Yeah, fitness modeling.
Yeah.
But after a few years of competing with WBFF, and I don't know if you know this or not, I actually relinquished my pro card with WBFF so that I could compete with NPC. Because after a few years with them, I decided as a coach, I wanted to be able to experience another organization, so I could train other people for other organizations. but also for myself, because when I competed with WBFF, I actually went pro at my first show, which was kind of bittersweet. Like, it was awesome, but at the same time, my body was nowhere near ready for that. And I felt like it kind of closed doors for me to grow as a competitor, and to kind of hone my stage presence and hone my process for preparing for a show. And so by switching to NPC, there's more levels, and it is actually quite a bit harder to advance to the next level. And I wanted more of that challenge, and I wanted more time. And so for me personally, I ended up switching so that I could give myself that time, educate myself in that organization, and experience it firsthand, so that when I worked with other competitors, I knew exactly what they were going into.
Experience is huge, right?
Yeah,
like knowing the difference, knowing the different subjectivity of the judges, the semantics that goes into it. How, are the judges in NPC looking for different things than WBFF are?
They are, yeah.
I think that's so smart to do that. Now, so like leading up to that, like, you did like one amateur competition, and forgive me if that's not like
no, that's right.
So one amateur competition, and how did you find that? Like, was it just something local, or did you know like this one was going to have people from WBFF there or NPC there that were going to see you? Was that strategic, or was it just like, I just want to do a show, I want to train for something, I want to just get my feet wet?
So I had some friends, and then also at the time I had a coach for my first show. I had coaches for my first first three shows. So my coach and my friends and I had decided we were going to do WBFF because of the reasons that I said just a minute ago. We went with Kansas City because that was the most time-wise, like that gave me 14 weeks to cut, and it was the closest to get there. So
yeah. Okay.
Logistically, it made the most sense for me, and so I was like 100% in, went in with both feet, and knowing, I did my research. I think that anybody who's going to compete should do their research on not just the organization they're going to compete with, but whoever is running the show that they're going to. They should know who what are they called? Not the producers, the people who are running the show at that location. Know who those people are, and know who the judges are that are going to be at that show. I don't want to say that they have different expectations in different regions. Technically, they're not supposed to, but understanding who the judges are, and their expectations for each category, those are all things that you need to research before competing, before you commit to anything.
Now, are you saying like you're like looking up each individual judge and like seeing what like their track record is of like how they judge, or are you talking about just like the organization in general and like, their judges typically are looking for X or whatever?
Knowing who the head judge is, that's super important. Knowing what their track record is and picking people, and how they decide. There are standards that they have to follow in making their decisions, and there's different categories that you have to, like requirements that you have to hit, to score well on. But in all honesty, I feel like different head judges hold slightly different preferences, and understanding what those preferences are can give you an advantage. An edge before you go.
It's smart. It's like, you know, the book The Art of War, right, is all about like having that mental advantage, right? So if now that's more so over your component, but like a little bit you are competing against the judge in a sense, like you're looking for something, I'm bringing you this, right?
Exactly.
So and so is there like, what was your route that you went down to like knowing that judge or knowing what they're looking for? Is that like just hearsay, or more like just talking to your network and figuring out that people that have competed in front of this judge? Or is there like some Reddit thread that like, oh, Judge X is like an asshole, you know, he only looks for like lat thickness or something? I don't know.
No. So again, when I was getting ready for my first show, all these social medias were not a thing. And so you had to rely heavily on your social network that were involved, knowing who the show promoters were, getting in touch with them. But mostly you can Google who won the previous year's show.
And just look at them and see what,
see what they have in common. Look at the previous years and see what they have in common with each other for first, second, and third place. And do the comparisons yourself and see what are they looking for. I mean, you obviously you have the general organization's outline of requirements. What is that word that I'm looking for? It's not requirements. It's the standards for that category.
I know what you mean. I know what you're saying. I'm picking up what you're putting down. So it's studying the game tape, right? Like as simply as like knowing what this particular, if you can get the judge's name, it's like seeing who won their last competition, looking at them, what did they bring to the table? So
exactly. I mean, it's part of the competition. There's so many aspects to competing that people don't consider. It's not just about your physique. It's about how well you prepare yourself mentally, emotionally. How well did you research? How well did you recover? How well did you follow your nutrition? How well did you practice your stage presence, your posing? How, you know, there's so much more than just, did you get shredded?
Yeah. Oh yeah. So much more. And so with that, being that we are the Weekend Warrior podcast, right? You had a full-time job with this, albeit in the fitness industry, or maybe you were actually marketing at the time, right? So like you had a full-time job. So how did you balance working full-time with training and recovery and diet and all this stuff? Like what, like, you know, if you can break it down simply, like what are your keys to success as far as like balancing both that training life and reaching a goal and then, you know, the work life?
Definitely writing down my schedule every day, hour by hour was, I mean, it sounds tedious, but literally knowing what I was going to go into the next day, getting up early. So starting early so that you have enough hours in the day to get everything done. That was important. What else did I do? There was a lot of, I'd say getting as much done before work as possible helped me be able to be done when I got home after work, if that makes any sense.
I get you. Yeah. So you could get that actual, like, you know, evening off to rest and like chill and wind down. Yeah.
Or prep my food for the next day, or spend time with friends and family. So getting up at 4 a.m. was, and sometimes still is, a thing for me. You know, you get up at 4, you hit your workout by 5, you're in the shower by 6:30, you're off to work at 7:30, you're there at 8. You're at work from 8 to 5, and then you come home, you prep your food, you spend time with friends and family. I mean, but really having discipline and in adhering to a schedule, that was huge.
Schedule's the biggest thing. And for me, is being like, essentially self-employed, owning my own personal training business, I live and die by my Google schedule. Whatever that block says I'm going to do, I
Yeah.
have to do it. That's my boss. Otherwise, I could do whatever the hell I want. I could cancel all my appointments and sit at home and drink beer all day if I wanted to.
Sure.
But like adhering to that training schedule of like, okay, this time you have client from boom, boom, boom. Then you're going to, mobilize from this hour and then eat and then whatever is huge. And I'm also a huge proponent of the early start. I think
Yeah.
like that gives you so much of an advantage, and it's such a gratifying feeling of like being up earlier than the rest of the world. You've got that mental advantage.
Yeah, you're
That can
ahead.
like take you through the rest of the day. And like, I mean, some of the most successful people like Richard Branson and some of these people, like their big keys to success are that they get their workout done in the beginning of the day.
Yeah.
That way there's also no excuse later on in the day. Oh, my meeting got pushed back. I usually work out at 5:00, but now I can't because I have a meeting then, right? So you're not giving yourself that out or that excuse. Shit, I know myself when I used to be in more of like a 9 to 5, I would like anything. If I was a little bit tired or my feet hurt a little bit, I'm like, shit, I'm just gonna go home. So
Yeah.
I started the same thing. I started getting up at 4 a.m., getting my ass into the gym and getting my workout done. And I would just get so motivated to like kick the rest of the day in the dick. You know what I mean? Like it gives you this sense of like accomplishment. Like, yeah, motherfucker, you were at this meeting at 8:00, but I've already been up since 4 and I got to work at it.
And I got shit done. What have you done today? My bed's made.
It's following that routine and being strict with it. So yeah, you got to go to bed a little bit earlier to wake up.
Yeah, you do.
But what are you really missing out on? Nothing.
It's really the discipline factor. I feel like that where most people fall apart and they're like, how are you so motivated? And I'm like, it's not motivation, because a lot of times there were times when I was training for something specific, whether it was powerlifting or a show, or I just did a sprint triathlon this last fall. Like, it wasn't motivation a lot of the time. It was just discipline and adherence to a schedule that I had set out for myself that day prior. And part of that discipline was stop overthinking and talking yourself out of things. Stop letting your mind tell you, oh, I don't feel like doing this. Like, as soon as you start hearing yourself in your mind say, you just stop that conversation. Don't even go there. You count to 5 and you get the fuck up out of bed.
I love that. Everybody listen to that. Count to 5 and get the fuck up out of bed. That's huge. I mean, that's the hardest part. Like and you know this too, I'm sure, is that like once you actually get up, like it's not bad.
Uh-oh, you're frozen. Nick.
Wait, see if we can Heather, you got me back. I'm sorry if it froze up a little bit. Yeah. This Zoom thing gets all flooded and everything. So sometimes the connection gets a little wonky, but I don't want to keep you too long. And there's so many different ways that we can go down with you. I know you've done powerlifting competitions. I've seen on your Instagram, you've done some weightlifting too, which is all so cool to me because, that's what I really like appreciate in like fitness in general, is not being like locked into just one thing, but it's being like multifaceted. Like, I right now I'm really into CrossFit. I compete in CrossFit and I coach CrossFit, so like that's my big thing. But since I've been in this quarantine, I've really gotten kind of back into like the bodybuilding roots, right? Doing kind of more of that like bro split of like I got a chest and back day now and all that because of the equipment that I have at my disposal. So it's kind of been fun to like really get back into that and looking more at the aesthetics. But yeah, we could definitely dive way deeper on this, and I would love to have you on again so we can talk about the powerlifting side. We could talk about the CrossFit you've done and the weightlifting. But what I want to leave this with is 4 questions. So 4 questions, very lighthearted, quick answers here. What's your favorite cheat meal?
My favorite cheat meal? Oh, snap. it's gotta be Mexican food, like chips and salsa, dips, and then you gotta throw like something sweet in there, like cheesecake.
Awesome. Awesome. Any particular place in Wichita that you go to for that meal?
That's a good question. But now my brain's going. All I can think about are all the different places I like to go. Because I also love hummus. I love to go to Bella Luna for that. Where I like the queso at Jose Peppers. You know,
okay.
Where else do I go for Mexican food? Oh, I'm looking at my husband. He's not listening.
Have you ever been to Connie's? It's
I've heard of it.
authentic
No.
spot, like kind of like near like Riverside, kind of off like downtownish. Really good spot there. Like their specialty is fried tacos. They're amazing. Anyway,
sounds delicious.
All right, question number 2 is going to be a 2-parter. Do you drink alcohol?
Occasionally, yes.
Okay, so
it's like once a week right now, maybe. Actually, no, we're actually trying to follow a diet right now, so I'm not drinking right now.
Oh, good for you. It's hard to do in these quarantine times when we're just at home all day, every day. So this is the real second question. If you could have a drink with anybody in existence, dead or alive, who would it be?
Oh no. Dead or alive. You know what? Probably my grandpa Favikia.
Very cool. Very
cool. His dad was in the mafia, and I would love to talk to him about those kinds of things. He also was a shoe farrier. He shoed horses, and he also what's it called when they keep other people's horses? I don't know.
A stable.
I don't know.
Stableman. I don't know. Well, shit. I mean, okay. So there's a note for the next podcast. We're definitely fucking talking about Grandpa after that.
And the mafia, So I'd love to talk about that. So.
All right. Question number 3. What's your least favorite movement or exercise? What do you hate doing? That, but is also like a part of the routine. Like, it's a highly functional movement that you have to do, but you just hate it.
You're not going to believe it. I hate squatting.
All right, no, that's fair. I hate squatting too. I hate back squatting.
I feel like same back squats. I hate the way it makes my guts feel. And I hate the way it feels just in general.
Like the compression of the spine.
Yeah.
I whatever reason can never, I think it's because of how I'm built and what my structure is. I can never get comfortable in a back squat. I always feel like I'm folding over and it's just a front squat. Give me that all day. I like overhead squats, but back squat.
I've got decent form. I just don't like it.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that it's one of the big 3 moves.
But I do it. I still incorporate it. It's that discipline thing.
Exactly. It's one of those things you have to do. All right. So last one here. What's the best piece of advice you've ever gotten?
Oh, God. You said that this was going to be lighthearted.
Well, I mean, it could be whatever. Man. It could be they hate us because they ain't us. I don't know.
Oh, my God. The best piece of advice I've ever gotten. I don't know.
Well, what comes to the top of your head? What's a quote that you really you've heard recently? What's comes to the top of the head? Something a quote that you really like right now.
A quote that I really like? Ugh. Nick. Honestly, it's probably something my husband's probably told me. Actually, you know what? It is something my husband told me. When I first started training for my first show, I complained. I think I complained probably a lot to him. And I remember complaining one time about how hard it was. And he said to me, if it was hard, everybody would do it. or if it was easy, everybody would do it. If it was easy, everybody would do it.
Yeah.
And I just remember, like, we were walking out of the house and I literally stopped and was like, he's right. And I don't want to be everybody. So I guess I'm just going to suck it up and get shit done. I don't know. Like, I'm not going to quit. I'm not a quitter. So yeah, that was actually something he said to me. If it was easy, everybody would do it.
Yeah, I love it. And that's the mental advantage right there. Well, Heather, thank you so much for coming on. I have to get you back on because there's so much more we need to talk about.
I'd love
to
to
give like a quick plug about Restore Hyper Wellness and
yeah.
please do.
Okay, so Restore Hyper Wellness and Cryotherapy is #1 hyper wellness in retail services nationwide. We do IV drip therapy, hyperbaric oxygen therapy, compression therapy, infrared sauna, red light therapy, stretch therapy, cryoskin, local cryotherapy, whole body cryotherapy. I mean, we got it all. So we also do micronutrient testing, which we talked about was so important, understanding. And so there are a bunch of restores all across the US. You can go to www.restore.com to find one near you. It is a franchise. They are awesome. And I am so excited that we are opening up one here in Wichita and that I get to head that project. That's crazy that somebody even trusts me to do that.
Why? You've got the knowledge. You can do it. Well, shit. My CrossFit gym in Dallas has about 1,000 square feet of empty space right now, office space, that I would love to turn into a recovery area. So tell Restore to give me a call.
You know what? Let me see what I can do about getting you in touch with them. And I know that we had talked not too long ago about there's one located kind of near where you are.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I think so. Well, so these are independently franchised, or is it just owned by one? Restore owns all of them.
They are independently franchised, but we're a very close-knit group of people. I would be happy to reach out to the one nearest you and see what they can do about getting with you in your gym. And I don't want to make any promises. So
no, yeah, it's all good. It's all
right
good. I love the idea of it. And again, thank you so much for coming on. We appreciate the time, and I'll talk to you soon. All right.
All right. Thanks, Nick.
Have a good one.
I appreciate it. You too.
Yeah. See ya.